Hello and welcome to the No Boss Podcast. I'm your host Patrick McDonald with me co-host Sheldon Kaufman. Today is a continuation of the NBA preseason show where we discuss the offseason for all 30 teams and their individual episodes and we predict their 2025 season. Today we have one of the teams who had a very interesting 2024 season. That's the Memphis Grizzlies. Well, let's go ahead and get the records out the way first because I think there's a lot of context that we can throw on these records after. Last season, they were 27 and 55, 13th in the Western Conference. Their expected record was 24 and 58, so not any better. 9 and 32 at home, so they were horrible at home, and then they were slightly better on the road, actually. 18 and 23 on the road. That has a lot to do with travel schedule, with them being Memphis. A lot of the time, they had to travel a lot from other Western Conference teams to go home to play games is a lot of things. So a lot of their travel from other cities was closer than traveling from Los Angeles to the Sacramento Kings was a lot easier of a travel than going from LA to Memphis for them. That's the context I would like to throw on that. Pre All-Star break, 20 and 36. Post All-Star break, they really hit the tank button, 7 and 29. Versus the Eastern Conference, 13 and 18, and versus the West, 14 and 37. So we mentioned it with the Pistons. One team gets an extra interconference game. Memphis was the Western Conference team. They played Detroit an extra time. It kind of has to happen with scheduling. And then in clutch games, they were 15 and 23, and then in other games, they were 12 and 32. So on the other end of blowouts, a lot. I'm sure you have the numbers pulled up with time missed with this team. Go ahead, read off some of the key ones that you see there.
Yeah, so John Moran only played in 9 games last year. Desmond Bain only played in 42. Marcus Smart, their biggest offseason addition, played in 20 games. Luke Kennard, 39. Brandon Clark, 6. Gigi Jackson only played in 48. Jaren Jackson Jr. also only played in 66. I mean, uh, it's great. I mean, Zaire Williams, 51. Derrick Rose only played in 24. And that's basically, I mean, all their top scorers, leaders in points per game, didn't even play near 45 games. I mean, just tells the story
Yeah,
that this was probably one of the most injured teams in the NBA and that all the 2023, 2024 stuff should definitely be taken with a grain of salt.
it should be taken with a pound of salt, I think.
Yeah.
Um, John Morant going into the season, he had a 25-game suspension because reasons we won't really talk about them, but yeah, yeah. For the video viewers, they just saw why. Um, anyway, John Morant missed a ton of time, comes back for 9 games. They were 6 and 3 in those games. They weren't completely buried at that time when Ja came back. Um, then Ja gets hurt. They just kind of gave up on the season at that point because Ja was going to miss most of the season. It was a shoulder injury, I think. It was a torn labrum, um, which for some players I would really be concerned about. But for John Morant, he doesn't really shoot much anyway. Um, Either way, season was really weird for them. Suspension stuff with Ja, injuries with Ja, and then all of their role players getting not their role players, but their other important players getting hurt too was like absurd. Jaren Jackson, you mentioned, missed a ton of time. Desmond Bain played half the season. Marcus Smart barely played. Steven Adams missed a ton of time. They ended up trading him at the deadline because he was out for the season. Like, just so much weird stuff going on with this Memphis team. And then we ended up getting the results that we got out of it. We'll go forward into that. It's negative 6.9 net rating. They were 26th in the league last season. Again, you're missing your whole infrastructure of a solid team. That'll happen specifically on offense. 106.8 offensive rating, 30th, so worst in the league on offense last season. Defense was still solid, 113.7. I think Jaren Jackson was towards the higher end of games played by their star players. They
Yeah.
were 12th in defensive rating. He's the big piece there, and they were missing still a lot on defense, but that kind of goes to show you how good Jaren is on that side of the floor. Um, and offense, 28th in transition offense, so again, not good. Basically, they were not good at really anything on offense. In the half court, though, 29th in pick and roll ball handler efficiency, 19th frequency, third percentile. Just wasn't good. John Morant's not there. Desmond Bane's running a lot more pick and rolls than he has to when he plays, but he didn't play that much either. So then it's very
Luke Kennard.
Luke Kennard pick and rolls.
Yeah.
Just a
Scottie
bunch.
Pippen.
Scottie Pippen Jr., who had a good summer league. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
he did have. It was pretty good.
Yeah, we're not going to talk too much
Pretty
about
good.
him because he is on a two-way contract now. Or he might even be on an NBA guarantee contract. But not hopefully not in the future plans for this team.
Yeah.
Anyway, other offensive stuff: 30th in roll efficiency, 29th in frequency. Steven Adams not playing really hurt them here. 0 percentile. It sucks. Like, to put lightly, like they just weren't getting enough out of their role men last season. A lot of that just has to do with the depth. I forgot to mention him with the ball handlers, but Derrick Rose too. At his old age. 22nd in post efficiency, 17th frequency. This is kind of where they had to run a lot of their offense through Jaren Jackson Jr. They're like, hey, I guess we'll give you post up reps because what else are we going to do? They also did G.G. Jackson in these a lot too. Like, he's a decently sized wing. Either way, not great, 28th percentile. And then in isolation, they at least didn't run a ton of isolation, which typically you see with these bad teams. 24th in isolation efficiency, and then 21st frequency. So they didn't run it a lot. 21st percentile was the overall ranking, but typically with these bad teams, there's a lot of isolation and a lot of just straight up point guard pick and roll. Other offensive stuff: 13th in offensive rebounding, 28th in 3-point percentage. They couldn't shoot last year at all. It was really bad. And then 6th in attempts. So they're getting a lot of them up. They're just clanking. 29th in pull-up percentage. They didn't have a bunch of pull-up shooters on this team. 18th in attempts. Again, they're probably taking a little too much for how good they were, but shit, they had to have their possession somehow. So, yeah. Anything you have on their offense?
Nah, it's just not good. I mean, there's no really other way to put it. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it more in the scheme stuff, I'm sure, but yeah, just not a good offense, really.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll talk about their defense, and we'll get to scheme. Like I said, 12th ranked, 6th in transition, so they're doing well there. 25th in pick and roll ball handler defense, 30th frequency, 17th percentile. They're not containing ball handlers. A lot of that has to do with this is a young team that doesn't have technique. A lot of it has to do with this is a bad team that really doesn't have a ton of energy day to day because they suck. But they weren't good containing ball handlers. They were really good at roll defense. They were first in roll defense, 100th percentile, and then 28th frequency. So teams are not running them. Typically, this is where you want to be. You want to be towards the top in preventing rim field goal percentage, and you want them to take the least amount of attempts. This is what holds up their defense. Teams are not shooting at the rim, and when they are, they're not getting good results. You're really limiting the best shots in the game of basketball. A lot of that has to do with Jaren Jackson Jr. He still gave a shit last season. Really, really still an awesome defensive player. Jaren Jackson is. 4th in post defense, 10th frequency, and then 90th percentile. They were doing a solid job here. They've had decent big play for a couple seasons now. Clark didn't play much last season. Steven Adams didn't play much last season. You really felt him on the offensive end not being there, um, and on the defensive end a little bit too. But his screen setting was big for them last season, or the couple seasons ago. And then, but also on the post defense side, they still managed pretty fine without him, even without a lot of traditional big play. 21st in isolation defense, 14th frequency, 31st percentile. It wasn't good. Not a great individual defensive team. Even when they were pretty good a couple seasons ago, it was Dylan Brooks is a decent defender, and then they just kind of play as a team defensively. And they would really crash the glass defensively. This season, they were only 23rd in defensive rebound percentage. So they're bleeding a lot here because of a lot of injuries, a lot of veteran players moving on. Any scheme talk about offense, defense? Go ahead. You got the floor.
Yeah, it's hard just because of how injured this team was last year. To It's just gonna look completely different next year. Like we said, they didn't have elite guard play. They weren't able to do a lot of the stuff they really wanted to in the pick and roll. So it was a lot of just Jaren Jackson. You're really our only competent scorer. Let's let you go to work, and then kick it out, and our guys are gonna chuck up threes. Um, Noticed it a lot. They would just give it to like Aldama or uh, Laravia, and then they would just
Arabia.
chuck it. Yeah, just like and that just attributes to the bad 3-point shooting. Um, and it's just a horrible offense, right? Uh, but like on defense, you have a defensive player of the year candidate. I think every year. I think he won it one year. I'm pretty sure.
It was
I mean,
so Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson
oh
were the
yeah,
two reigning guys. I don't know the order, but they were the
yeah.
two reigning guys going into the season. So yeah,
Yeah, and that's why. Thank you, because I was about to say they're missing their best defender. I mean,
on ball. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, best on ball defender by far. And Marcus Smart, and he just didn't play at all last year, right? So I mean, this defensive stuff, I think is gonna look a lot different last year. These numbers, I think the offensive numbers are gonna look a lot different this year as well with elite guard play, with John Morant and even Marcus Smart, being a veteran and having that playmaking ability. It's Last year sucked, but there's a lot to look forward to. I think with this team.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Previously, with this team, is what I want to kind of focus on with scheme talk. On offense, John Morant, they like to kind of use him just as a driver, pick and roll guy. They let him create a lot of stuff. They like spread pick and roll. Jaren can really shoot the ball, so you have him off the ball on offense, and gives you a lot of size on defense. Steven Adams was a great screener for John Morant, and that really made their pick and roll game deadly because John Morant and Steven Adams has a ton of rim pressure. Are you going to help off of Jaren Jackson, who's one of the better big man shooters? Are you going to help off Desmond Bane, who's one of the best shooters in the league, period? Right? You're just not going to do that very often. It made their offense really like pretty effective, even in the playoff settings over the past couple seasons. Even though they came up short against some veteran teams, like they could really play. And they could make it work offensively, and they were just they would kick ass on defense with Jaren next to a center. They had to get away from that this season, which is why I think even with some of their injuries, I think they could have still had a top 10 defense if they had Steven Adams, or just a center to where Jaren didn't have to play center all season. Um, Jaren plus a center, I think, is a top 10 defense, regardless of the other players on a team. Um, they just couldn't do that much last season. Other than that, they like the high jaw. He's really frail. It allows him to be off the ball where he can make some pretty impressive help plays. That's kind of how they like to play defense, pretty straight up, right? Steven Adams and Jaren would play drop before. and they would get picky with who would guard who. They would want Jaren on a bad shooter or a center basically all the time. Is how they like to do it. Even if that bad shooter is a point guard, they kind of want Jaren on that guy. Any other scheme talk that you have, even if it's on the past teams?
No, let's get into the off season.
Yeah. So I had mentioned the center part. That was the key part of their draft. You said that you really like this guy. Uh, Zach Edey, you got him. What do you think?
Yeah. Uh, well, so last year enter the draft class, right? Or two, not this year's draft cycle, but last year's draft cycle.
Mm-hmm.
No one picked him up, right? Came back to Purdue and just went on an incredible finals March Madness run. Uh, I mean, it was ridiculous. The dude could not be stopped, and I'll just go ahead and get into it onto why he couldn't. First of all, 7'4", 300 pounds, 7'10" wingspan, just really good stuff, right? Especially at the center position. He had 25 points per game last year, 12 rebounds, 2.2 blocks. So I mean, just a lot of good figures. I mean, he's a dominant finisher. We saw him go against some of the best defenders, big man defenders in college basketball last year in March Madness, and he would hit him with the same hook shot, right? Same
The
little hook
hook
shot.
spin,
I mean, the hook
the
spin,
spin
yeah, the hook
into
spin
the.
where he gets his elbow around him, very
Mhm.
uh just very sneakily, and then he gets wide open. I mean, he's probably one of the best guys at doing that in this draft class. His putback opportunities are also incredible. Whenever guards miss the ball or miss shots, he's always there. He's able to get easy putback dunks. I mean, obviously, right? He's 7'4" with a 7'10" wingspan. Uh, yeah, dominant. He's dominant in the post. He can. He usually likes it with the right hand. A lot of teams. A lot of teams. The thing about stopping Zach Edey last year was forcing him to his left, and he was a little inaccurate with that. But he still would make them, and teams would like fight hard every possession to try to get him away from his spot. Really hard guy to move, and he's good at passing outside of that kind of. His passing has improved over time at Purdue, and it's really good whenever he gets doubled and stuff. The game he's able to slow the game down. We see with a lot with the young guys where the game speeds up, right? That's why you send the traps. The game's sort he's able to slow it down, make the right reads. The biggest weakness for him and why I think he's not very high for a lot of people is that he just doesn't fit today's game. He had zero transition buckets last year in college basketball.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, zero, and he scored 25 points per game. Right? This isn't a guy that you can put in for 25 minutes a game in the NBA. It's not going to happen. This is a guy
Yeah.
that's probably going to have to be a 10 to 15-minute guy, which is fine, right? Zach Edey is good enough to give you quality scoring, quality rebounding, and quality rim protection. Um, so my thing is when uh, the Jaren Jackson, right? He fits good with the center. This is a really good center, but can he? How long can they play together in the court together? Like, you know what I'm saying? Zach Edey can't start. I don't think Zach,
Mhm.
but he might be good in lineups when Zach's off the bench. Maybe they put Jaren Jackson in there to see how that works out. See if their playing styles work together. But I mean, this is a really good pick, and a lot of people aren't very high on Edey, but I think that he's going to be one of the better scorers in the draft. Just from a pure, just his paint, his footwork is really good. I mean, he's just a good scorer, really
Yeah.
good scoring big.
I'll say this. I think if Zach and Jaren play together, I think it's gonna be awesome. Like,
Yeah,
I think that's gonna be great. My gripes with Edie, you had mentioned it. This guy's not gonna be able to play 30 minutes a game. I
yeah.
don't think. Like, if he could, this guy might have gone number one,
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah,
Like, he's that good. Like, he 7'4", you had mentioned it. His standing reach is 10 or is almost 10 feet. Like, he can just up the ball in the rim, right? Like
Yep.
that's you can't take that away. What you can't take away is he doesn't move at all on up the court, right? Like, he's very slow, but his footwork's great. He's very strong. He shot like 85% at the rim this season.
Yeah.
Ridiculous stuff. His hands are so good. Very little do you see him bobbling. Entry passes. Teams literally, like, they're doubling him from half court when he's in the paint. It's like the Steph Curry stuff, but like in reverse. Like, they're like, hey, we're not even going to let you get the thing. Just pass it to him in the corner. Pass somebody else in the corner. We're not letting Zach go to work, because 85% is insane. You mentioned the rebounding. I don't know how much of that's going to go away in the NBA. Like, this guy, in 30 years, when Zach Edey's career is over, we're going to look at it and be like, damn, why did this guy not play enough minutes? And it's going to be similar to what I feel about Jonathan Isaac on defense. You're preserving him as a player by limiting his playing time. Jonathan Isaac, on a minutes basis, is a top 5 defender in the league. I think Zach Edey's going to be just like that on offense. Maybe not a top 5 offensive player, but like, it's like he's going to be really good once he really hits his peak. You had mentioned his passing. I feel very similar about his passing to a league version of Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid as a prospect was actually a pretty, like, really interesting passer, but that didn't really show up in the league. He can punish you for making aggressive moves. If he can hold the ball up, nobody's going to get it, so it really helps him limit turnovers. He can pass over everybody. He doesn't really have much like manipulative passing ability, is what I like to say on him. And post players can typically be a little more turnover prone because they're dribbling the ball stationarily, versus ball handlers where they're moving constantly. It's a little harder to just flat out just take the ball or surprise them in a split second. But I think the passing will at least allow him in small spurts of playing time to be a really awesome offensive player. Like, this could be like a 6th man of the year guy, and we've only talked about his offense. I think he's kind of like a really sneaky good defender too. Everybody's going to talk about him not being able to move his feet, which is probably true, but you don't need to be a good mover at the center position if you're going to play drop defense 95% of the time. And he's going to be an awesome post defender because nobody's going to want to attack him because he's so damn strong and so damn big. Like, just him being around the rim will limit people's attempts at the rim. Clearly, Memphis didn't have a problem with that anyway, but I really like the fit here. I think offensively, if you match his minutes with Jaren Jackson, like, he could be a very nice offensive bench big man. I don't know if they have the starter yet, because I don't know if I want Edey starting. I think I just want him being an awesome 6th man for his whole career, because I want to see him play for 15 years.
If he went on like to Philly or something, that would have been crazy. Like, imagine getting beat, and then when Edey comes for like his 5-10 minutes, it's like the same shit.
You know what that would kill?
Like, that would just been crazy. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Everything you said, I think is 100% right. I think they splashed with this draft pick.
You just mentioned it with Philly too. If he went to Philly and played the non-Embiid minutes, Embiid would never win MVP because his on-off numbers would look so so weird, because there is now another dominant offensive center, and that's why they don't know how to do offense with Embiid on the bench. Either way, I think their offense is going to be very different with Edey on and off the court. When Edey's sharing the floor with John Morant, I want to bring this up. I mentioned Steven Adams before as a screener. Edey's just as awesome of a screener. Like, I really like his ability to set screens. And like, he's not super quick rolling, but when he gets the ball on a roll, like, you're not really going to stop him because he has the momentum. When he has momentum, he can go up there and just dunk the ball, right?
Yeah.
He isn't really a standing dunk kind of athlete because he's not super athletic, but once he's in the pick and roll, he's really an awesome player. And I doubt Zach Edey will be a top 5 player in this draft. Maybe not even a top 10 guy, but I'm very sure that he can go in the NBA and score because it's very, like, college teams didn't know what to do with him. Like, sure, there are going to be some NBA centers that can take it away, but like, post scoring is like, nobody can stop Nikola Jokic one-on-one in the NBA
I don't know, like, if many backup bigs can stop him from scoring. Like, yeah, starting
right
bigs
away.
can, but
Yeah,
yeah, when
I
Edie
agree.
comes right into the league with those bench units coming in, I mean, it's gonna look crazy.
Dude, Paul Reed's doing nothing against.
Yeah,
against
that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, Paul Reed's
what,
getting bullied.
what's Precious Achua doing against Zach Edey? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's like him coming off the bench. I think's really good, but I mean, yeah, it sucks that he can't give you 25 minutes.
yeah, and I want to say one thing: the translating to NBA thing. The big concern here that I do have in college basketball, Purdue played pretty slow generally around Edey. That's because they have a 40-second shot clock there. They take a
Yeah,
lot of that shot clock. It's only 25 in the NBA. That's the big concern with Edey for me. But, like, dude, I don't know if he needs 40 seconds. Like, if he's already down there, like,
yeah. He like
I'm
5 seconds, just
give
one
him
move.
five
He's like
seconds.
a 1-2 move guy.
Give
He's
him
good.
give him 2 dribbles and a spin
Yeah,
move. He's killing backup centers. Um, that might have been the longest prospect talk we've had because I think he's just such a
yeah,
cool prospect. 4-year
yeah,
guy. Uh,
yeah.
really.
Too.
Uh, Cam Spencer. Did you get any Cam Spencer stuff?
Yeah, I got a little bit about Cam Spencer. I also got something on Jalen Wells as well. But I mean, Cam Spencer, just a really good 3-point shooter, right? 44% from the 3-point line last year. He was really good in catch and shoot as well. He was a very good passer. He has good decision making skills. Uh, it's a lot to like off that. He played like really like experienced guy. Um, Played like 5 years in college. Not great as a on defense. He can't really create his own shot, but I mean, I like him as just a guy that comes in, just role player that can give you 3-point shooting. Um, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. At least at the very minimum, I see him as a G League guy who could, uh, come up to the NBA if they need a shooter, um, with injury. So yeah, you could also mention Jalen Wells.
yeah. Jalen Wells, 6'7", 200 pounds, 6'7" wingspan, really good 3-point shooter. 41% last year from three. He attacks closeouts well. His catch and shoot game is very good. Um, he also has really good defensive potential. Like I said, 6'7" wingspan. Um, Things that he has to improve. Well, he was only a freshman last year, I believe. He only played 1 year at Washington State. So very, very raw, very young. Um, so finishing around the rim, uh, his athleticism, it needs a little bit of work. He's limited. He's limited to 3-point shooting. So it's kind of evident what the Grizzlies wanted to address this year. Uh, that being the big man and the 3-point shooting concerns that they have with Steven Adams going and their 3-point being so bad last year.
Yeah, two guys who could be definitely role players in the NBA. I really like the additions. And Memphis has kind of a similar track record to the Heat where they kind of do develop these guys who they have come through the G League. And, they've done it with Conchar. They've done it with LaRavia. Dylan Brooks was a second round pick, right? Like, they've had good success rate with these guys who generally teams don't have good success rates with. So I think these second round picks are very, at least for Memphis, it's worth bringing these up. Other offseason moves that Memphis has made, they brought in another one of those guys, James Huff, long-term G
Hey,
League guy, good stretch big in the G League a couple seasons now. Um,
he
he
was on the
hey,
Wizards at one point.
probably he
Yeah.
might be like their starter. I might be missing somebody with their depth chart, but he might be their starter next season if they want to go to Jaren at the 4 minutes. Either way, or
Oh,
he's
they also picked up Armando Baycott.
yeah,
Happened
UDFA.
recently. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I didn't know if you got to those yet or.
Um, yeah, I'll actually pull up because J Huff might not be on an NBA deal yet. Actually, I'm pretty sure he's no. Okay, no, that's with the Lakers.
Is J Huff the guy that played lacrosse?
If so, I have not heard of that. Oh yeah, so J Huff's on a two-way. So hey, maybe not, but Memphis has had success with those guys.
Oh,
Gigi
Pax
Jackson too.
Dexter.
I didn't bring up Gigi Jackson either. Other offseason moves. I'd mentioned J Huff. You had just brought up Baycott. Interesting young player, interesting wing. A bunch of these guys who are just getting two-way deals. Miel Oni, two-way guy. Mazahuni Piera, I think, a lot of these guys are two-way, Exhibit 10 guys, training camp deals, but Yuki Kamamura, again, probably another training camp two-way guy, but either way, a bunch of interesting players. Other guys that they lost, again, they didn't add anybody too significant besides Zach Edey, but those were their additions. There weren't any big ones. Their big additions are John Morant being healthy, Marcus Smart being healthy, Desmond Bain being healthy. Their losses, Timmy Allen. Uh, Memphis had so many players last season. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot that you do not know of that were on the team last year. Jordan Goodwin, actually kind of an interesting player, played for Washington a good bit, was on Phoenix last season, was a part of the Beal trade. I thought he was going to be a big piece for Phoenix, but it didn't end up happening. Trey Jameson, he was a two-way contract guy. They waived him. New Orleans picked him up. Not too significant. Again, this was the 24 Memphis Grizzlies. There weren't many really cool guys on here. Xavier Simpson, yeah, whatever. Lamar Stevens, kind of interesting player, was traded for. Um, he was traded from Boston for Xavier Tillman. Interesting, but not a huge loss. Yuta Watanabe, 6'8" shooter is how I describe him. Jack White, G League guy, and then Zaire Williams traded to Brooklyn for a second round pick. It just wasn't working out in Memphis, and it seemed like they needed some wing minutes with some of the guys who did take steps forward for them this past season. So, any notes on those addition subtractions?
No,
Yeah,
I mean I don't really think they lost anybody significant. Like you said, they didn't really get anyone significant. So
yeah. They just didn't have much to do this offseason.
true.
Again, they were really bad this season, so net rating won't tell us very much. And the roster's changed so much in the past two seasons besides Ja and Jaren. Like the only consistent guys from then, from 2 seasons ago, besides Ja and Jaren, are like
Desmond Bain.
Desmond Bain, Conchar, and Cindy Aldama, and Luke Kennard, who might play a little bit this season.
Luke
Um,
Kennard's nice.
I just there's not much for me to pull lineup data wise with them besides Jaren plus the center is kind of kicked ass forever now, and John Morant works really good with screen setters. Um, we can go into lineups and predictions with them. Starting lineup, Ja and Jaren starting for them. I think we both have. For me, I think this was a question going into the season whether they were going to start Bane and Smart next to Ja, or if they were going to bench Marcus Smart. I think they're going to start all three of them. They didn't really have to make that decision because nobody played games for them last year. Um, if I
Well,
had
who
to
would you
guess it,
bench if you had
if
to
I were to
bench
bench,
Smart or Bane? And
I
then
would
who would you
bench.
put?
I would bench Smart because I think he could be a good facilitator off the bench. Um, Desmond Bane's just such a great shooter. Like they need that next to John Morant, who's gonna pressure the
Yeah.
rim. Like literally,
Yes.
I did some work today to get numbers for Cade Cunningham. I'll point that out there. Like I'm doing a short form content for him. John Morant is
Mm,
like was he played 9 games, but he was towards the top in rim pressures this season. So,
yeah.
um, like not like towards the top, like he was ridiculously high in the 9 games that he played. Um, they need shooting around him. Desmond Bain, like sneakily one of the best shooters in the league. Um, they're gonna want him out there. If they're not starting him, like what do we think the
They're not starting
three
him.
is if they're benching one of Bain or Smart, who do we think their starting three is?
Okay. Um. All right. Well, so I think Aldama. I got Jackson starting center, right? Um. I
Okay.
I know that they start well together, but I don't see a starting caliber center on this roster besides Jaren Jackson Jr. So that's why I'm going Jaren Jackson Jr. at center. I'll go Santi Aldama at power forward. Like you said, they need shooting. He probably was one of the reasons their shooting wasn't that great, but he's still around 35%, which is average. He's 7 feet. He can space the floor. He can rebound well. I think it's an interesting guy to put there. Damn. I mean, maybe you go Luke Kennard, Vince Williams. I don't
Yeah.
know if you start Luke Kennard. I guess I would go Vince Williams. I guess.
Here's how I feel about Vince because Vince did take a bunch of playing time this season, um, and really kind of impressed a little bit. I really like him as a passer. Like, I think he's an interesting passer. So I kind of like him on the bench where he'll at least get the ball a little bit more. Um,
So you're saying,
for that
sorry.
reason, for that reason, I would kind of like Vince on the bench, which is why I
Okay.
think it's fine to start Smart because there is actually a guy who could facilitate on the bench. And in your bench
Yeah.
lineups, your offense should be Zach Edey, right? Like
No,
realistically,
yeah.
like that's how I kind of feel
100%.
about it. Like that's what your offense should be at the power forward and center position. Like I can go either way with starting Jaren at the 4 or the 5. I kind of like him starting at the
Hmm.
4 with Brandon Clark still. I don't think Brandon Clark needs to play starter minutes. He might only have to play like 20 minutes a game at the starting spot because with Laravia and Aldama next to Jaren Jackson, like that can get you some really interesting offense. And I think specifically when Ja Morant doesn't play, because when Ja plays, you kind of want a better screen setter than Jaren. Um, so typically, like Aldama and Laravia, I think are very interesting in lineups with Jaren at center. But I would say that generally in the starting lineup where they want to have John Morant running a lot of their offense, I think Brandon Clark as a screen setter is pretty big there. And Brandon Clark should only play John Morant minutes, is how I feel. When Edie comes in the game, um, you want the stretch bigs out there. You want Jaren out there probably for some range. Um, so maybe the center splits are like Brandon Clark plays 20 minutes, Zach Edey plays 18 minutes, and Jaren plays, I think, 10 is the rest of them. If
So
that's
this is
the
a
center
center
by
by
committee,
committee, in your opinion? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
But I think it still
I
should
like
be.
that.
I think it still should be good. Is the thing. Like depending on what they need in that lineup, I think is what they do at center. And if not, if Jaren's playing the 5, like I said, Aldama, Jake LaRavia playing the 4 is pretty pretty solid. Where I see this team really struggling is with wings, kind of. They don't have wing-sized players besides Vince Williams. Like, Marcus Smart's their starting 3.
They'll have
You know,
GG Jackson.
later, yeah, they'll have GG later in the year.
Yeah, it'll come later, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and GG I really like. He played in my hometown, so I watched him play a little bit in college. He's a power forward, right? Like, he's not really a small forward either, but it's just,
Really,
yeah, that's how I
you're
feel
not
about
that high on G. Are you high? Are you not that high on GG?
No, I'm still pretty high on him.
Oh,
I still
okay,
think he's
okay.
a really good
You just
player.
don't think he's a wing. You don't think he's a wing.
Yeah.
More of a power
He's
forward.
more of,
Okay.
He's a scoring for more than a two-way wing, I think. Which is why I like Vince Williams too, but like he's just also not a great shooter. So I think this team could still struggle to shoot. That's why I really do like the Jalen Wells pick. It's a wing-sized player who can shoot, which this team kind of doesn't have. And like they can maneuver some lineups to where like Kennard is playing with Smart, who plays a little bit bigger than 6'4", and I think they could get away with that a little bit. It's just with them, I really struggled to see how they get shooting and size in some of their lineups without playing Jaren at the 4. That's how I kind of feel about their lineup situation.
Luke Kennard shot 45% last year from 3.
I believe it.
That's crazy that he's still doing it. Like for as long as he has been, like still
for
just an elite shooter.
He has too.
Yeah, that too. It's crazy.
Because he was Detroit, then LA, then I think there was another team, and then Memphis.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of teams. Landry Shamet too. Similar time.
Landry Shamet.
For 3. Nah, I think Kennard's a better player. And Kennard,
oh yeah,
sneaky, like a decent facilitator too. Overall, though, like their bench, we kind of didn't come to a starting lineup, but I said,
I think we did. Except for,
Bain,
I think you
Smart.
just need a. Yeah.
And then you said either Aldama or Laravia with Jaren.
I like Aldama, yeah. Okay.
And then I said Jaren Clark, but I could see, yeah. And then bench guards for them. Like I like Kennard. Other than that, like, yeah, their bench is kind of weird. Like they don't have a real backup.
They got Derrick Rose, bro. What you mean? They got Derrick Rose. Why aren't you saying they got Derrick Rose? Come on.
He was washed. He was washed 2 years ago on the Knicks, man. He was washed 2 years ago. I don't know. It's a very interesting Memphis team. I want to see how these lineups end up shaping out. I don't have too many predictions because I think it could go a lot of different ways, but that's kind of how I generally feel about it. I think they would be best really doing a center by committee, depending on what the rest of the lineups need. You have anything else before we go to true predictions for this team?
Nope.
Okay, let's start with this. Do we think they got better in this offseason?
I'm going to say, yeah. I don't know about how much, but my only reasoning is because of the draft. And they didn't really lose anything in free agency.
Okay.
And they're going to be healthy. So I don't know if we should take that in consideration if they got better like through the offseason.
Yeah, I was interested in how you were going to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, so nah, I'm not going to take that in consideration. I'm going to go based off pure offseason. I'm still going to say they got better. Not anything crazy. You know what I mean? They get better though. I mean, obviously this is going to be a way better team than last year. But what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, so if we're comparing to 2024, they're obviously going to be better. Like, no way they have the doomsday situation that the 2024 Grizzlies were. Like, no way that happens again. Comparing to the 2023 team, I'm not sure how much better this is than that team, because that's kind of distant from now. Like, that's kind of a
Hold on, let
while
me look
ago.
up that team real quick.
They were a 2 seed and lost to the Lakers, I want to say.
Is this 2022, 2023?
Yeah. I'm
All
not
right.
sure how much better this team is than that. So, like, a lot of people are saying, hey, Memphis, last time they were healthy, they were a 56-win team and all this. But I'm like, man, they've lost a lot since then, besides just injuries. I don't know how to, you know, and like some of the injuries are carrying into this year. Like, Gigi Jackson's out for 3 months, which is why we didn't really bring him up in the wings that we were talking about before. Um, I'm not sure where to put them up against prior Memphis teams. I feel like they generally probably did get a little bit better, because I think the Edie. No, they're probably worse than the 23 team.
I'm like locked in right now. I'm trying to see like who they started. I'm looking at a box score right now.
They're probably worse than the 23 team, is how I feel about them. I feel like because they still had Tyus
Yeah.
Jones on those teams.
Oh yeah, Tyus Jones. Damn.
They still had Dylan Brooks on those teams. Like, I'm saying, like, a lot of people don't like Dylan Brooks, but like he was a real factor on those Memphis teams.
That's when Desmond Bain was
Really, yeah.
good,
Desmond Bain had a
good
crazy
too.
good season that year, and Jaron
Yeah.
won Deep Boy, I think, that year.
Yeah. And then Xavier Tillman was like actually still an
Oh,
NBA player.
yeah. They. I feel like they were definitely better then. I'm I'm interested
I
in where
mean,
we're gonna rank
51
them.
wins is pretty damn. Is like, I mean, yeah, I don't see. I mean, if you're saying that, hell no, I don't think this team gets 51 wins. There's no fucking way. I'll go ahead and say that right now.
I don't think it's
Um,
impossible, but I don't think it's likely.
all right.
Is how
Well,
I feel.
I'm gonna say it's impossible.
All right. Yeah. I was gonna say we'll probably see where we
I'm
rank them
interested to
later.
see. Yeah, yeah.
I'm because I don't know yet. I don't know at all with the West. We haven't really
Like
we got
sat
that
down.
coming. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and say it. That'll be after the Kings episode, I think. Will be the Western Conference predictions. By the time this episode comes out, you have already seen the East episode where we predict the entire Western Conference like we did with the East. So, that'll be after the Kings episode, I think. No, it'll be after the Suns episode.
Cap.
No, no, it's after the Kings.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah. Um, Offense MVP, defensive MVP, X Factor. I'll go ahead and do mine. Ja Morant, offensive MVP. He's going to touch the paint 20 times a game next season on offense. He's going to generate you 8.5, 9 assists next season. He's going to draw a ton of fouls. I forgot to mention it with Edie. Really good free throw shooter. Not really good, but like he made 73% of his free throws in college with a ton of attempts.
Yeah.
So makes me really like his offense going forward. Ja Morant, offensive MVP, like everybody knows the Ja Morant stuff. Jaren Jackson, I think it's pretty obvious. Like, this guy is kind of approaching, like, he's
Say it.
in,
Say it.
he's a deep boy candidate, like, favorite, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Like, he's in that top echelon of Gobert, Anthony Davis, Victor Wembanyama. We'll talk about him. Um, he's in that range of defensive players. Is how I feel about Jaren when he's healthy. And the numbers will show it. X Factor, Marcus Smart. I think that's my answer. If he can shoot the ball really well, like he's flashed in his NBA career, I think that makes the 3-man lineup of Morant, Bain, and Smart like really good, and it kind of just establishes their offensive identity of Ja Morant screener shooter and shooters, right? Like I think that'll really make their starting lineup unstoppable if Marcus Smart really develops as a shooter. And it's still Marcus Smart on defense because that might not be guaranteed after an injury-riddled season. So I'm interested in your answers.
Yeah. I mean, I also have John Moran, offensive MVP. I mean, we saw what this team was without him. Whenever he served his suspensions 2 years ago, suspension this year, the injuries this year. This dude is elite. Just fun to watch. Really helps his team. Um, for defensive player of the year, yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. I mean, he's defensive player of the year candidate in the NBA. Of course, he's going to be the leading candidate on this team. Um, X Factor, yeah, I'm agreeing with Marcus Smart or I wanted to say John Morant, but I don't really like doing like the two same
Yeah,
guy for two awards. But I mean, I already kind of said it about John Morant, but yeah, like you said, Marcus Smart. Can he come in? Can he be a deep lockdown defender with all the injuries? Can he shoot? Because if you can shoot, this opens up this offense, right? Because now you have Desmond Bain and Marcus Smart, who can both shoot, right?
yeah.
And then you also have Santi Aldama that can shoot, and even Jaren Jackson showed flashes of three-point shooting.
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
call it
Marcus Smart can have,
flashes. I would say like he
yeah,
can
no,
shoot it.
yeah, he can
Like
space the floor. Yeah. He can space the floor. Um,
yeah,
and yeah, like if Marcus Smart can become an average 3-point shooter, this team is really good.
yeah.
I
Like
think.
remain one because he is average, but like he'll go stone cold.
Yeah, consistently average.
Yeah,
You know. Um, yeah, I think just some closing thoughts. This team is going to be a surprise. I think it's going to be just a team that teams don't want to play, right? Um, yeah.
I agree. Um, One other thing that I just want to touch on before we leave, I'm really interested in how the tank leaders from last season adjust to playing on a competitive team. That's the one reason I do think this team might start out a little bit slow because Vince Williams, Gigi Jackson, who's hurt, but when he comes back, like he might get lost in the the flow of things with not really being able to score the ball as much, right? Like those are things to consider. I'm interested in seeing how these guys adapt to playing a winning culture of basketball. Um, Other than that, that's just a storyline to look forward to for the season. Do you have anything else before we wrap this one up?
Nope.
Yeah. So that'll do it for Memphis. Next episode is San Antonio, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Because we've done
I
Dallas.
don't think there's anyone else.
Oh, no, no. Okay. We messed up. We did New Orleans randomly. So next episode is New Orleans. The next episode for us to record is San Antonio. So
Yeah.
y'all will see us in the New Orleans episode. In the New Orleans episode, we're not going to tell you, but San Antonio's next. Yeah, so that'll do it all for Memphis. We'll see you then.